So here's another little helpful hint. If you need to run heavy gauge wire to anything in your boat, say like a trolling motor, or in my case, starter cables and a winch, it is actually cheaper to buy jumper cables than it is to buy the wire. Now this is 8 gauge wire, 12 feet long, and it cost me $10. Now around here, 8 gauge wire is about $1.50-ish a foot. So, and that's just for one side. You got to buy the red, and then you got to buy the black wire. So 12 feet long, I don't know, I can't do that math because I'm not that smart right now, but it's a lot more than $10. And you just cut the ends off and you got plenty of wire. So, a little helpful hint for running heavy gauge wire to your trolling motors and starter wires and whatever else you need thick wire for. So I'm getting ready to install this little light switch or light panel, switch panel, whatever you want to call it, USB and cigarette lighter and voltmeter in my boat. But I highly disagree with how this is wired here in the back. Because as you can see with this model, there's 0 fuses. And the way this wiring works is you got a red positive and black negative. That is your main power negative to the switch panel. This goes to the power in on each one of these switches, and then on the bottom here you have a power out. And then you have the yellow and the blue. The blue is the positive and the yellow is the negative, and that's for continuous light that stays on your switch panel. Now why I don't like this is, for one, there's not an easy way to fuse this unless you run inline fuses off of each one of these, and that sucks. And you also have one main power that comes in and powers everything. I don't like that. I'm a firm believer of fusing stuff and having bigger wires than what you really need. But anyways, and I want to run this this fuse block here so I can have everything fuse protected. Another thing I don't like is if you have power going to this positive and negative and this positive and negative right off the battery, those lights stay on all the time. So it's a drain on your battery. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull off all this extra crap that I don't need. That leaves just this this positive. That's going to power the voltmeter, USB and cigarette lighter, and this positive and negative, and the other negative. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run main power to this fuse block. You got positive up here, negative down here. That's going to be constant power from my battery. And then I'm going to run, so let's say this one, this is the positive. It's going to go off to that one, which is going to power the USB, cigarette lighter, and the voltmeter. But in the middle of that, I'm going to add a switch. This switch right here. So I can have the option to turn that off, because I don't want constant power draining my battery from this switch panel. I'm also going to tie in the positive and negative, the yellow and blue, over there into the back of this. So when I flip this on, I'll have power to my voltmeter, so it'll be my battery, battery power, and power to the USB, cigarette lighter, and then these LEDs on the bottom will be lit up. And when you flip the switch, then these other lights come on. So, then being that the middle's power in, then every other switch is going to get wired from this to that, you know, so on and so forth. And then the power coming out is going to go to my accessory, my LED light bar, interior LED lights, stuff like that. So that's how this is going to get wired up. I'm going to start installing it, so stay tuned. So I'm just starting to get everything wired up here. All the connections are going to be soldered. Right there's one soldered, and then heat shrunk. And a good helpful tip for running wires when you have a bunch of the same color going to the same area, you want to label them. An easy way to label them is you just take a colored tape. You put one when you're setting them up, you put a piece of colored tape on one side and then another piece of colored tape on the other side. That way when you get hooking it up on your fuse panel and your switches, you know what is what, and also you can track it down later if you ever have an issue. So there's a little tip for running wires. So I'm just finishing up the wiring here. I got LED lights installed on the front. The winch is hooked up. Pop open this cover there. There's the winch all hooked up, wired up. Just cut the hole for the switch panel. I got the bilge pump installed, just not wired up yet. And then I got the fuse block hooked up, waiting for that. I scratched the paint a little bit, waiting for the touch-up paint to dry. And then the battery's hooked up. All I gotta do is connect the dots. She'll be good to go. Alright, so this thing's wired up enough for now. Kind of tough to see. Got the damn sun in the way here. Alright, so there's a fuse panel. I got a few things hooked up. I still got a few more things to hook up and clean up some wires yet. But it's wired up enough that I am going to go take it out for a spin because it's 60 degrees out in February in Minnesota and the river's wide open. And I've been waiting for this moment for a long time. So I'm going to go for a ride. But go over the wiring real quick. So you got your positives and then you got your negatives. Negative, positive. Now keep in mind that these terminals are not live, even though there's power hooked up from the battery. These are not live until there is a fuse in there. So once it's fused, then it's live. The negative or the ground is always live. So here's that master switch. Right now it's off. If you look on this switch panel, it's off, and then I'll flip the switch right now. It's on. So you have to have that switch on to see the voltmeter and to have these ports work. If the switch is off, they will not come on. That way there isn't a drain on the battery. And then, yeah, it's tough to see. But I got to clean up these wires yet. But anyways, so we have our navigation lights. Flip the switch. That comes on. And we got the red and the green navigation lights. Oh, and this the switch panel will work if the main switch is not on. The main switch mostly just powers the lower LED lights, the voltmeter, cigarette lighter, and USB. And then we got the LED light bar in the front, and then the LED pods on the sides. Turned out pretty sweet. But now it's time for me to push it out, put it on the trailer, go fill it full of gas, take it for a spin. If you'd like to see that video, please give a thumbs up, like, subscribe. The next video will be of this in action. First run on the water. Thanks for watching, everybody.